No ruler was more feared than the vampire king of Velmoria, except the vampire king who feared losing his only son. King Draven Nightshade had crushed rebellions, conquered kingdoms, and survived 5 centuries of war. Yet none of that power could stop the slow fading of Prince Lucian. Every healer failed, every spell failed, every blood ritual failed. And while the kingdom's greatest mind searched for answers, a poor servant girl would become the only person to notice the terrifying truth hidden inside Blackthorn Castle. The highest tower of Blackthorn Castle no longer belonged to the royal court. For months, it had belonged to a dying prince. The ancient fortress stood beneath a crimson moon, its stained glass windows glowing like pools of blood against the night sky. Candlelight flickered through endless stone corridors. Royal guards lined every hallway. Blood mages, physicians, and alchemists moved through the castle at all hours. Yet despite the activity, a heavy silence hung over the fortress. Everyone knew the same terrible secret. The heir to Velmoria was dying. At the center of the castle's highest chamber sat Prince Lucian, barely a year old, far too weak. His skin had become pale even by vampire standards. His tiny hands trembled whenever he woke. Most days he lacked the strength to keep his eyes open for more than a few minutes. The kingdom's greatest healers surrounded him constantly. Ancient blood mages studied his lineage. Royal physicians monitored every symptom. Master alchemists brewed remedies worth more than entire villages. None of it worked. Each morning the prince seemed weaker than the day before. And each morning the fear inside Blackthorn Castle grew stronger. No one felt that fear more than King Draven Nightshade. The immortal king stood beside Lucian's chair night after night, refusing to leave. The same man who had once commanded armies now spent his evenings watching the slow rise and fall of his son's fragile chest. To the kingdom, Draven was a monster forged by centuries of conquest. To Lucian, he was simply a father running out of time. Explain it again. Draven's voice cut through the chamber like a drawn blade. The gathered healers exchanged nervous glances. The elderly chief physician swallowed hard. Your Majesty, the symptoms still match ancient blood consumption syndrome. The prince's body continues rejecting nourishment faster than it can absorb it. We have increased the blood infusions. We have strengthened the restorative enchantments. We have attempted every treatment known to us. Draven's crimson eyes never left his son, and yet he grows weaker. No one answered. The silence was answer enough. For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Even the blood mages looked afraid. Across the chamber, unnoticed by almost everyone present, a young servant girl stood beside a cart filled with medicine bottles and fresh linens. Her name was Alara, an orphan, a kitchen worker, a girl most nobles couldn't have named if they tried. She delivered meals, cleaned trays, carried supplies between the castle's many halls. Invisible work done by an invisible person. But unlike everyone else in the room, Alara wasn't watching the healers. She was watching the prince. Over the past several weeks, she had begun noticing something strange, something nobody seemed willing to question. Every evening after Lucian received his blood treatments, his condition improved, his breathing steadied, his skin regained color, his eyes opened. For a few precious hours, he looked almost healthy. Then dawn arrived. And somehow all that strength disappeared again. The pattern repeated too perfectly, night after night, day after day, as if something was taking the prince's life away almost as quickly as the healers restored it. Alara stared at the sleeping child. A chill ran down her spine. For the first time, she wondered whether the prince was truly dying from illness at all. And that single question would lead her into a conspiracy hidden deep within the shadows of Blackthorn Castle. What Alara did not yet know was that the answer lay behind sealed walls, forgotten tunnels, and a betrayal older than she could imagine. But before she uncovered the truth, the Vampire King would first learn a lesson more terrifying than war. There are enemies that cannot be defeated with armies, especially when they are already inside your own home. What do you think is really happening to Prince Lucian? Is it truly a rare blood curse, or is someone hiding a much darker secret inside Blackthorn Castle? Let me know your theory in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next chapter. Trust me, the mystery surrounding the dying prince is only just beginning. Alara did not sleep that night. Long after the healers left Prince Lucian's chamber, long after the royal guards changed posts, long after Blackthorn Castle settled into its usual silence, she lay awake on her narrow cot in the servants' quarters with one question burning behind her eyes. Why did the prince always worsen before sunrise? By morning, the castle had already accepted the answer given by the royal physicians. Ancient blood consumption syndrome. The words traveled through the halls like smoke. Servants whispered it over wash basins. Guards muttered it beneath their breath. Nobles repeated it in grave tones, as though naming the illness made it easier to understand. But Alara did not trust words that explained too much and solved nothing. So she began to watch, quietly, carefully, the way invisible girls learned to survive. Every evening, Prince Lucian received fresh blood treatments in crystal vials warmed over enchanted flame. Within an hour, color returned faintly to his cheeks. His tiny fingers curled around the blanket. Sometimes his eyes opened, dark and glassy, searching the room as if he had briefly remembered how to live. The healers would sigh with relief. The blood mages would nod to one another. King Draven would stand a little straighter. Then morning came, and Lucian would be worse. His lips pale, his breathing was shallow, his little body limps beneath velvet covers embroidered with the crest of House Nightshade. Once could be a coincidence, twice could be misfortune, but every night, every dawn, no illness moved with such perfect timing. By the third day of watching, Alara stopped asking herself whether something was wrong. She began asking who wanted everyone to believe nothing was. The answer, if it existed, was hidden beneath layers of velvet, blood, and royal silence. Blackthorn Castle had become a place of beautiful panic. Noble families arrived wearing black silk and jeweled mourning pins. Though the prince still lived, they gathered in candlelit galleries and behind half-closed doors, speaking in voices low enough to deny but loud enough to be heard. If the child dies, Velmoria cannot survive a succession crisis. The king has no other heir. There is still Lord Malric. Alara heard the name often. Lord Malric Nightshade, the king's younger brother. Where Draven was shadow and silence, Malric was charm wrapped in velvet. He moved through the castle with graceful sorrow, speaking softly to worried nobles, placing a comforting hand on trembling shoulders, assuring everyone that Velmoria would endure. He was handsome in the way old portraits were handsome, sharp-boned, pale, perfect. His dark hair fell neatly to his collar, and his smile seemed designed to make people trust him before they realized they had done so. Everyone said he loved Prince Lucian. Everyone said he had stood beside Draven from the beginning. Everyone said the kingdom was fortunate to have such a loyal royal uncle. Alara had learned early that when everyone said the same thing, it was wise to listen for what they were not saying. That evening, she carried a tray of warm broth, folded linens, and fresh medicine bottles toward the nursery wing. The corridor outside Lucian's chamber glowed red from the stained glass windows. 2 guards stood at attention. A healer hurried past her without looking down. Alara lowered her eyes as expected. Then she saw it. A faint shimmer along the edge of the carpet. At first, she thought it was candle ash. She crouched, pretending to adjust the tray cloth, and touched one finger to the powder. Silver. Not polished silver from a goblet or blade. Dust, fine as flour, glittering beneath the crimson light. Her stomach tightened. Silver was not used in the nursery, not near vampire infants, not near royal blood magic. The healers avoided it. The guards avoided it. Even the servants were warned never to bring silver utensils into the prince's wing. Yet there it was, near the nursery doors, along the hallway carpet, beneath the wheels of Lucien's small chair. Elara wiped her finger quickly against her apron and stood. "Did someone break something here?" she asked one of the guards. The man frowned. "What?" "This dust." He glanced down, barely interested. "Probably from the masons. Castle's old. There are no masons in this wing." Then from the windows. "The windows are stained glass." His expression hardened. "Do your work, girl." So she did, but she watched more closely. Inside Lucien's chamber, the air smelled of herbs, iron, and old magic. The prince slept beneath dark blankets, his face as still as porcelain. Beside him, 3 blood mages stood over a table of instruments, murmuring over charts. One of them was a narrow-faced man Elara had seen often but never heard addressed by name. He wore the crimson sash of the royal court and kept his gloved hands folded too neatly in front of him. Elara set down the tray. "Forgive me," she said softly. "Should silver dust be near the prince's room?" The chamber went still. Not dramatically. Not enough for anyone important to notice. But enough. The narrow-faced mage's eyes flicked toward her, then to the door, then to the floor. His mouth tightened before he forced it smooth again. "Silver dust?" he asked. "Yes, my lord, in the hallway. You are mistaken. I touched it." His voice cooled. "Then wash your hands before you touch anything else." One of the physicians waved her away. "Servants see ghosts in every shadow. Leave the tray and go." Elara should have obeyed. She knew that. A servant who asked too many questions became a servant no one saw again. But before fear could close her mouth, another voice entered the chamber. What question did she ask? Every person in the room turned. King Draven stood in the doorway. No guard had announced him. No footsteps had warned them. He was simply there, tall and terrible in black velvet, his silver-white hair falling over his shoulders, his crimson eyes fixed on Elara. The blood mages bowed at once. Elara nearly dropped into a curtsy. "Your Majesty," she whispered. Draven did not look away from her. "Speak." The narrow-faced mage stepped forward. "Only servant nonsense, my king. The girl believes she saw. I did not ask you." Silence struck the room. Elara felt every eye turn against her. Her heart hammered so loudly she feared the king could hear it. "I found silver dust near the nursery doors," she said, "and beneath the prince's chair. I only wondered how it came to be there." Draven's expression did not change, but something in the room did, a tightening, a breath held too long. The narrow-faced mage's fingers curled against his sleeve. Draven noticed. So did Elara. For one dangerous moment, the vampire king looked at her as though deciding whether she was foolish, brave, or already dead. Then he said, "What is your name?" "Elara, your majesty." "A kitchen servant." "Yes. And kitchen servants now investigate royal chambers?" Her face burned, but she lifted her chin. "No, your majesty. Kitchen servants clean what others step over." A physician gasped softly. The guard shifted. Draven stared at her. Then, to Elara's shock, he looked toward the floor. "Leave us," he ordered. The healers obeyed quickly. The mages slower. The narrow-faced one was the last to go. As he passed Elara, his sleeve brushed her arm and he whispered so low only she could hear it. "Forget what you saw." Then he was gone. But Elara did not forget. That night, when the castle bells marked the hour after midnight, she returned to the nursery wing with a candle hidden beneath her shawl. The corridor was empty. The guards had moved to the outer hall. The silver dust was still there, faint but visible beneath the moonlight. Elara followed it, past the nursery doors, past the crimson windows, past a row of ancient portraits whose painted eyes seemed to watch her pass. The trail led to the far end of the corridor, where the stone wall bore no door, no handle, no seam. Then the silver dust vanished beneath it. Elara raised her candle. The flame bent toward the wall, as if something behind the stone was breathing. Alara raised her candle closer to the wall. The flame bent again, not from the wind. There was no wind in that corridor, no open window, no draft slipping through the ancient stones. Yet the flame leaned toward the wall as if something behind it had taken a slow, silent breath. Alara's fingers tightened around the candle holder. Every sensible part of her begged her to run. Instead, she lowered herself to her knees and studied the floor. The silver dust had not ended at the wall. It had slicked beneath it. A hidden door, then, or something worse. Alara had spent most of her life in servant corridors, and servants knew the bones of castles better than kings did. Nobles entered through grand archways. Guards marched through the main halls. Healers used polished staircases and velvet-lined passages. But servants moved through the veins, behind tapestries, beneath stairwells, through narrow stone tunnels built centuries ago so meals could appear hot, fires could stay lit, and secrets could travel unseen. Blackthorn Castle had more hidden paths than any living person knew. Some were mapped, most were not. Alara turned away from the nursery wall and hurried down the corridor, keeping her candle low. Past the portraits, past the sleeping suits of armor, past a window where the crimson moon stared in like a watching eye. At the end of the hall, behind a moth-eaten tapestry embroidered with the first Nightshade King, she found what she was looking for. A servant latch, half-rusted, almost invisible. She pressed it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the wall clicked. A thin black opening appeared. Cold air breathed against her face. Alara slipped inside. The passage was so narrow, her shoulders brushed both sides. Dust clung to the air. Cobwebs hung like torn lace from the ceiling. Somewhere deep in the stone, water dripped with the patience of something counting time. Blackthorn Castle did not fall asleep in those tunnels. It felt awake, listening. The walls groaned faintly as she moved. The floor dipped without warning. Old pipes hissed behind the stone like distant whispers. More than once, Alara thought she heard footsteps following her. But whenever she stopped, there was only silence and the frantic beating of her own heart. She followed the direction of the nursery wall from memory, left at the split passage, down 7 uneven steps, past a bricked archway marked with old scratches, then up a ladder so narrow it scraped her palms raw. At the top, the tunnel widened. The air changed. It no longer smelled of damp stone. It smelled of ash, iron, and old blood. Alara nearly turned back then. Nearly. But Prince Lucien's pale face rose in her mind, the way his tiny fingers curled around the blanket after every treatment, the way his strength vanished by dawn, the way the court mage whispered, "Forget what you saw." Alara lifted her candle and continued. The passage ended at a wooden panel, blackened with age. No handle, no latch, only a carved symbol at its center, a crescent moon pierced by 3 drops of blood. She touched it. Pain flashed through her fingertip. A thin bead of blood appeared. The panel shuddered, then opened. Alara stepped into the room behind the nursery wall. For a moment, she forgot how to breathe. It was not a chamber any servant had built. It was ancient, older than the nursery, older than the royal wing, perhaps older than Blackthorn Castle itself. Dust covered the floor in thick gray layers, except where recent footprints had disturbed it. Black candles stood in iron holders along the walls, their wax melted into frozen streams. Forbidden symbols had been carved into the stone, each one filled with dried crimson stains that looked far too much like blood. At the center of the room stood an obsidian altar, smooth, black, polished like a coffin lid. Blood runes circled its base, glowing faintly beneath the dust. And above the altar floated a pendant. Alara took one step closer. The pendant was made of red crystal, shaped like a tear caught in the moment before falling. It hung in the air without chain or support, turning slowly above the altar. With every turn, it pulsed. Once, twice, like a heartbeat. The light inside it was not steady. It throbbed. Living red. Alara's skin prickled. She had seen jewels in royal halls, rubies on noble throats, bloodstones in the crowns of old kings. This was not a jewel. This was something hungry. A faint sound filled the chamber. Not humming, not singing, breathing. Alara moved around the altar, careful not to disturb the runes. Then she saw it. A thread of crimson light extended from the pendant, thin as silk, bright as fresh blood. It stretched across the chamber, passed through the stone wall, and vanished in the direction of Prince Lucian's nursery. Alara stared at it, horror spreading cold through her chest. The thread pulsed. The pendant answered. Somewhere beyond the wall, Lucian slept. No, not slept, was being drained. The treatments were not failing. They were being stolen. Every evening, the healers poured strength into the prince. Every night, this thing took it away. Alara pressed a hand over her mouth to stop herself from making a sound. The illness was a lie. The diagnosis was a curtain, and behind it, someone inside Blackthorn Castle was murdering the Vampire King's son, one heartbeat at a time. A door opened. Alara froze. Voices entered the passage beyond the chamber. Low, male, measured. She spun toward the nearest shadow and slicked behind a broken stone column, clutching the candle flame against her palm until it died. Darkness swallowed her. 3 figures entered, then 4. Their robes were black, trimmed with crimson thread, blood mages. Not the public healers who bowed beside Lucian's chair, but something older, colder. One carried a silver bowl. Another scattered fresh powder along the floor, silver dust. Alara held her breath so tightly her chest burned. The vessel is stable, one mage murmured. Stable is not enough, another replied. The king grows suspicious. The king suspects grief, not treason. A soft laugh followed. Alara's stomach turned. Then another figure entered. Not robed, not masked, dressed in dark velvet with a silver clasp at his throat. Alara recognized his graceful stride before the candlelight touched his face. Lord Malric Nightshade, the beloved royal uncle, the prince's grieving protector, Draven's trusted brother. He stopped before the altar and looked up at the pulsing crystal with calm satisfaction. How long? He asked. One of the mages bowed. If the siphon continues at its present rate, the prince has perhaps 3 weeks remaining. Malric's expression did not break. No horror, no grief, no hesitation, only calculation. Too long, he said. Alara's blood went cold. Malric reached toward the crimson vessel, and its red light brightened as if greeting him. The kingdom is already afraid, he continued softly. Fear must become certainty. Certainty must become mourning, and mourning must become obedience. One of the mages lowered his voice. And the servant girl? Malric smiled. Alara could not move. Find her, he said, before my brother starts listening. Behind the column, Alara pressed herself deeper into the dark. The answer had been behind the nursery all along, and the man killing Prince Lucian was not an enemy beyond the castle walls. He was family. Alara did not remember leaving the hidden chamber. One moment, she was pressed behind the broken column, listening to Lord Malric order her death. The next, she was crawling through the servant tunnels with stone dust beneath her nails and terror burning in her throat. She did not stop until she reached the laundry passage 3 floors below the nursery wing. Only there, hidden between hanging sheets and baskets of royal linens, did she allow herself to breathe. The prince was not sick, he was being murdered, and the murderer smiled beside his cradle. By morning, Alara knew what she had to do. She had to tell King Draven. It should have been simple. A dying child, a hidden chamber, a forbidden relic, a traitor in the royal family. But nothing inside Blackthorn Castle was simple when the truth came from the servant's mouth. At dawn, she waited outside the prince's chamber until Draven emerged. He looked as though the night had carved him hollow. His silver hair was loose. His black coat was unfastened at the throat. His crimson eyes held the sleepless fury of a man who had spent too many hours begging silence for mercy. Alara stepped into his path. "Your Majesty." The guards moved at once. Draven lifted one hand, stopping them. "You again," he said. "There is something behind the nursery wall." His expression sharpened. "A chamber," Alara continued quickly. "An altar, blood runes, a red crystal pendant. I saw the magic connected to Prince Lucian's room." The guards exchanged glances. One almost laughed. Alara forced herself to keep speaking. "It is draining him. Not illness, not a blood curse. Someone is stealing what the healers give him." Draven stared at her for a long, dangerous moment. Then his voice lowered. "Choose your next words carefully. I heard Lord Malric there." The hallway went silent. Even the torches seemed still. Draven's face changed, not with belief, but with something colder. "Warning. You accuse my brother of treason and attempted murder. I accuse him because I saw him. You are a kitchen servant. Yes. He is royal blood. Yes. He stood beside Lucian's cradle the night my son was born. And last night he stood before the relic killing him." The nearest guard took a step forward. "Mind your tongue." Draven did not look at the guard. He looked only at Alara. For one breath, she thought he might strike her dead where she stood. Instead, he turned away. "If you value your life," he said, "do not repeat this accusation without proof." Then he left her standing in the corridor. Proof. The word followed Alara through the castle like a curse. By noon, she had traded kitchen duty with a scullery boy, stolen a ring of keys from a sleeping clerk, and slipped into the oldest archive beneath Blackthorn Castle. The archive was a burial ground for forgotten knowledge. Shelves rose into darkness. Chains held certain books shut. Dust lay thick over ledgers older than villages. The air smelled of parchment, candle smoke, and secrets no one had wanted remembered. Alara searched until her eyes burned. Blood relics, forbidden rites, royal siphons, ancient vessels. At last, beneath a shelf marked with the black seal of outlawed magic, she found a cracked leather volume titled "Instruments of Blood Transfer and Noble Line Preservation." Her fingers trembled as she opened it. There, drawn in faded red ink, was the pendant. The same tear-shaped crystal, the same runes, the same hunger captured on paper. The crimson vessel, Alara read by dying candlelight. Centuries ago, vampire nobles had used it to transfer strength, youth, and vitality from one bloodline into another. At first, they claimed it preserved dying heirs. Then rivals vanished. Children weakened. Servants were found bloodless in sealed rooms. The practice had been banned after an entire noble house murdered its own descendants to extend the life of a patriarch who refused to die. The final line made Alara's blood turn cold. "The vessel does not heal. It consumes." She tore no pages. She stole nothing obvious. Instead, she copied the symbol, the description, and the warning onto a scrap of linen hidden beneath her sleeve. That night, she found Draven alone. Not in the throne room, not in council, but beside Lucian's bed. The chamber was dim, lit only by black candles and moonlight. The prince slept restlessly beneath embroidered blankets, his tiny chest rising with fragile effort. Draven sat beside him, one large hand wrapped gently around Lucian's small fingers. He did not look like a king. He looked like a father afraid to move because even the air might take his child away. Alara stopped at the doorway. For the first time, she felt the weight of what she was asking him to believe, that his brother had betrayed him, that his court was poisoned, that the danger was not outside the castle walls, but inside his son's nursery. "Your Majesty," she whispered. Draven did not turn. "You should not be here. I found proof." This time he looked at her. Alara stepped forward and placed the copied notes on the table beside him. His eyes moved across the symbols. Once, twice. His expression remained unreadable. Then his gaze fell to the drawing of the crimson vessel. Something flickered. Recognition. Not of the relic itself, perhaps, but of the pattern. Lucien's brief recovery, the dawn weakness, the silver dust, the nervous court mage. Draven slowly looked toward his sleeping son. "When he receives blood," Alara said softly, "he improves." Draven's jaw tightened. "By morning," she continued, "it is gone." He said nothing, but his hand closed more firmly around Lucien's tiny fingers. Outside, thunder rolled over the mountains. Inside, the Vampire King seemed to age 100 years in one breath. "What destroys it?" he asked at last. Alara swallowed. "I don't know yet." So she returned to the archives, deeper this time, past the chained books, past the royal histories, into a locked alcove where the oldest records had been wrapped in silver-threaded cloth. She found the answer near dawn. Only the moon-born guardians may break the vessel's binding. Their blood resists the hunger of stolen life. Their mark is the crescent beneath the left collarbone. And their children shall carry the moon at the throat. Alara stopped breathing. Slowly, she reached beneath her dress and pulled out the necklace she had worn since childhood. A small moon-shaped pendant, dull silver. The only thing left with her when she had been found as an orphan outside the castle kitchens. Her hands shook as she loosened the collar of her blouse and looked down. There, beneath her left collarbone, hidden all her life beneath cloth and labor, was the pale birthmark she had never understood. A crescent moon. Alara stared at the page, then at the necklace, then at the mark on her skin. Everything matched. She was not merely a servant who had noticed too much. She was a descendant of the one bloodline that could destroy the crimson vessel. A sound came from behind her. Soft, deliberate, the scrape of a boot against stone. Alara turned. The archive door was open. A figure stood in the darkness, face hidden beneath a crimson hood. In one gloved hand he held a curved silver blade. "Alara," he whispered. Then the candles went out. The candles died all at once. Darkness swallowed the archive. Alara stumbled backward, clutching the ancient record to her chest as the hooded figure stepped inside. "Alara," he whispered again. The silver blade in his hand caught the faintest trace of moonlight from the high window. She ran. The blade struck the shelf where her throat had been a heartbeat before. Books crashed down around her. Chains rattled. Dust exploded into the air. Another figure appeared at the far end of the aisle. Then another. Blood mages. Their crimson hoods hid their faces, but their hands glowed with the same dark magic she had seen behind the nursery wall. Malric had found her. Alara darted between the shelves as a lash of red light tore through the air behind her. It struck a locked cabinet, splitting the wood in half. Forbidden pages scattered across the floor like frightened birds. "Do not kill her if you can avoid it," one mage hissed. "Lord Malric wants to know what she told the king." "That depends on how fast she runs." Alara reached the archive's rear wall and slammed her hand against the servant latch hidden beneath a loose stone. "Nothing happened?" "Open," she breathed. The mages advanced. The latch clicked. Alara threw herself into the passage and pulled the panel shut behind her just as a silver blade scraped through the gap. She plunged into the hidden tunnels without a candle. The castle became a maze of breathing stone and blind corners. She knew some passages by memory, but panic turned every turn unfamiliar. Behind her, the panel burst open. Boots struck the floor. Red light flared. "Alara!" The magic hit the wall beside her, showering her with stone chips. She ran harder, down a spiral stair so narrow she nearly fell, through a servant's wine passage, past a rusted gate, Into the catacombs beneath Blackthorn Castle, the air turned colder. The walls changed from carved stone to rough burial rock. Ancient nightshade kings slept behind iron grates. Their marble faces watched her flee with blank, dead eyes. Names older than the kingdom passed in flashes. Veyron, the bloodless. Serapha, the cruel. Draven's ancestors. And now their descendant's son was being murdered by his own blood. Ilara's foot caught on a broken tile. She fell hard. Pain shot through her shoulder. The ancient book skidded across the floor. A blood mage appeared at the mouth of the crypt, breathing hard beneath his hood. Enough. He raised his hand. Ilara grabbed the nearest thing she could reach, a rusted funeral chain, and pulled. A suspended coffin gate crashed down between them. The mage cursed. Ilara snatched the book and ran into a forgotten crypt lined with cracked statues. There was no way out. Only darkness. Only bones. Only a stone angel with both hands pressed against its heart. The mage's footsteps approached. Ilara backed away until her spine struck the angel. Her fingers brushed a carved crescent on its chest. A hidden door groaned open behind her. She fell through and landed at the feet of King Draven Nightshade. For a moment, neither moved. He stood in a torchlit underground passage with 2 royal guards behind him, his face carved from fury. Ilara, she gasped for breath. They're here. The first blood mage leapt through the opening after her. He never touched the ground. Draven caught him by the throat and slammed him into the wall hard enough to crack stone. The mage's hood fell back. It was the narrow-faced court mage from Lucian's chamber. Draven's eyes burned crimson. Speak, he said. The mage choked. Draven tightened his grip. Speak. The man broke. He confessed in pieces. The crimson vessel, the hidden chamber, the nightly siphoning, the silver dust used to stabilize the spell, the false diagnosis, the corrupted healers, and, finally, the name, Lord Malric Nightshade. Draven did not move as the confession spilled into the torchlight, but something in him changed. His rage did not explode. It became still, deadly. Why? He asked. The mage laughed once, weakly, because your brother waited 4 centuries to inherit a throne that would never be his. Ilara looked up. The mage's voice trembled as he continued. Before the prince was born, Lord Malric was next in line. He believed time favored him. He believed even immortals make mistakes. Then Lucian came. Draven's expression darkened. The child ruined everything, the mage whispered. So Lord Malric decided the child would not remain. Draven released him. The mage collapsed, coughing. Lock him beneath the eastern crypt, Draven ordered. No one speaks to him but me. The guards dragged the mage away. Ilara rose unsteadily, still clutching the ancient book. Draven looked at her. For the first time, there was no dismissal in his eyes, only the terrible knowledge that she had been right. My brother, he said softly. The words sounded less like speech than a wound opening. They found Malric, before dawn, in the Hall of Red Saints, speaking with 3 noble lords beneath a window of crimson glass. He turned as Draven entered. Brother, Malric said smoothly. You look as though the night has treated you poorly. Draven crossed the hall. The nobles stepped back. I know about the chamber. For 1 fraction of a second, Malric's smile faltered. Then it returned. What chamber? The vessel. A myth. The mages. Servants' gossip. Ilara saw you. Malric looked past Draven to where Ilara stood near the doorway. His eyes softened with perfect sadness. Poor girl, he said. Fear does strange things to the mind. She has spent too much time near deathbeds. Draven's hand closed around the hilt of his sword. You expect me to believe a kitchen servant over my own blood? Malric asked. No, Draven said. I expect the truth to reveal itself. Malric spread his hands. Then bring proof before the court. Until then, do not let grief make you cruel. It was a flawless denial. No fear, no mistake, no evidence that could not be buried by sunrise. Then a guard ran into the hall. Your Majesty. Draven turned. The guard's face was pale. It is the prince. Lucian was dying. By the time they reached the nursery, his breathing had thinned to almost nothing. His tiny body lay motionless beneath the blankets. The healers shouted over one another. Blood infusions spilled across silver trays. Magical lights flickered and failed. Draven went to his son's side and froze. Yalara had never seen such terror on any face, not even her own. Lucian's heartbeat stuttered. Once, then again. A physician whispered, "We are losing him." Draven bowed his head over his child. For a moment, the vampire king looked ready to tear the world apart. Then, Alara stepped beside him. "Malric is moving faster because he knows we're close," she whispered. "If he thinks Lucian survives, he hides everything. If he believes Lucian is gone," Draven lifted his eyes. Slowly, the plan formed between them without needing many words. A false death, a hidden prince, a grieving kingdom, and a traitor arrogant enough to step into the light. Hours later, as black clouds gathered above Blackthorn Castle, the great bells began to ring. Once, twice, again and again, their mournful sound rolled across Velmoria. Servants fell to their knees, nobles covered their mouths, guards lowered their heads, and from the highest tower the announcement spread through the kingdom like blood through water. Prince Lucian Nightshade was dead. Prince Lucian Nightshade was dead. By sunset, every tower of Blackthorn Castle wore black banners. They hung from the battlements like strips of torn shadow, snapping in the cold wind beneath a blood-red sky. Bells mourned from the highest spire. Servants wept into their aprons. Guards stood stiff and hollow-eyed along the corridors. Their helmets bowed. Across Velmoria, candles appeared in the windows. For the lost heir, for the broken king, for the future that had died before it could speak. Inside the castle, nobles moved like ghosts through the halls, draped in velvet mourning clothes and jeweled sorrow. Funeral preparations began at once. Black lilies were carried into the throne chapel. A silver cradle was placed beneath the royal crest. Priests of the old night whispered prayers no one wanted answered, and Lord Malric Nightshade comforted them all. He stood among grieving nobles with a face carefully shaped by sorrow. "My brother must not be disturbed," he murmured. "His grief is beyond measure." Hands touched his sleeves, voices lowered around him. "The kingdom will need strength now. Velmoria cannot remain uncertain. You are the king's brother." Malric only bowed his head, but his eyes gleamed. He believed he had won. Far below the mourning castle, in a sealed chamber guarded by Draven's most loyal soldiers, Prince Lucian still breathed. Barely, but he breathed. His small body lay wrapped in black silk inside an ironwood cradle hidden beneath layers of protective runes. No healers attended him now except one old physician Draven trusted more than court politics. No blood mages were allowed near him. Every door had been sealed. Every guard sworn to silence. Draven knelt beside the cradle, one hand resting near his son's cheek. Alara stood behind him. The prince was alive, but the crimson vessel still held most of what it had stolen. His life had not returned. Not yet. "The longer it remains whole," Alara whispered, "the weaker he becomes." Draven rose slowly. His face was no longer hollow with grief. It was sharpened by purpose. "Then tonight," he said, "you destroy it." Ilara touched the moon pendant at her throat. The old archive pages had told her what she was, but knowing the truth was not the same as surviving it. "I don't know how." "You will. And if I fail?" Draven looked at Lucian. For a moment, all the power of 5 centuries fell away. "If you fail," he said quietly, Then I will lose my son twice. That was all Alara needed. An hour before midnight, while the kingdom mourned above, she returned to the nursery wing. Not through the main corridor, not past guards or grieving nobles. She slipped through the servant passages, through the same narrow veins of Blackthorn Castle that had carried her toward the truth once before. The castle seemed different now, not merely watching, waiting. The stone walls groaned softly, the old pipes hissed, her candle flame bent toward unseen drafts. Somewhere above, the funeral bells continued their slow, terrible song. Alara reached the hidden panel behind the ancient tapestry and entered the passage behind the nursery wall. This time, the air was warm, too warm. It pulsed against her skin in waves, thick with the smell of blood magic. When she reached the carved door, the crescent symbol glowed red. The chamber beyond was no longer silent. It was alive with ritual. Black candles burned in circles across the floor, their flames twisted sideways, defying the air. Blood runes blazed along the stones, casting crimson light over the obsidian altar. The crimson vessel floated above it, brighter than before, swollen with stolen life. Around it stood the blood mages, 7 of them. Their hoods are drawn low, their hands raised, and at the center of the circle stood Lord Malric. He had removed his mourning cloak. His dark velvet coat gleamed with silver clasps, and his face no longer wore the mask of grief. He looked almost joyful. "The prince is gone," one mage said. "Why continue the siphon?" Malric smiled up at the vessel. "Because death is not enough. I want every trace of his claim extinguished. Every spark, every drop. Tomorrow, when the nobles swear loyalty to me, no hidden miracle will crawl back from the dark." Alara's blood chilled. Lucien had not fooled him completely. He was finishing the theft. She stepped from the shadows. "Then you should have looked harder in the dark." Every head turned. For one heartbeat, no one moved. Then Malric laughed softly. "Little servant." The mages raised their hands. Alara held up the moon pendant. The laughter died. Malric's eyes narrowed. "Where did you get that?" "It was left with me." "No." The word left him like a curse. The first mage attacked. A whip of blood-red magic cracked across the chamber. Alara threw herself aside as it split the stone where she had stood. Another spell followed, then another. Candles exploded in bursts of black flame. Shards of rock flew through the air. The walls shook as if the castle itself had finally begun to scream. Alara ran toward the altar. A mage stepped into her path. She lifted her hand without knowing why. The crescent birthmark beneath her collarbone burned. Silver-white light burst from her palm. The mage was thrown backward into a pillar hard enough to crack it. Alara stared at her own hand. The moonborn power was awake. The runes on the floor changed. Crimson symbols flickered. Then it turned pale. One by one, forgotten marks hidden beneath the blood magic ignited around her feet. Ancient protective runes rose through the dust like stars breaking through storm clouds. The chamber answered her. Malric's face twisted. "Kill her!" The mages attacked together. Blood magic tore through the air. Alara lifted both hands, and silver light formed before her like a shield. Spells crashed against it, shaking her bones. She screamed, not from fear, but from the force of something old and buried surging through her blood. She saw flashes. Moonlit warriors standing before vampire kings, guardians sealing relics beneath stone, a woman with Alara's eyes placing a silver moon around a child's neck. Then the vision shattered. The shield broke. Alara fell to one knee. Malric crossed the circle, drawing a dagger. "You should have stayed invisible." Alara looked past him, at the crimson vessel, at the red thread stretching through the wall toward Lucien. Still stealing, still feeding. She rose. Malric lunged. Alara stepped inside the blow and drove her hand through the ring of blood runes. Pain tore through her arm. The altar shrieked. The vessel pulsed wildly. Every candle exploded at once. The chamber plunged into stormlight, red and silver, blood and moon, betrayal and ancient justice. Alara grabbed the floating crystal. It burned like ice. The stolen life inside it screamed. For a heartbeat, she felt Lucien's weakness, his fading breath. His tiny heart is fighting to continue. Then she closed her fingers. The moon mark on her skin blazed. "No more," she whispered. The crimson vessel shattered. A crimson storm erupted from the crystal, throwing Malric and the mages across the chamber. Light roared upward, struck the ceiling, then rushed through the wall toward the hidden room where Lucien waited. Far below the castle, Prince Lucien gasped. His eyes opened. Color returned to his face. His heartbeat strengthened. In the ruined chamber, Alara collapsed beside the broken altar, crystal shards glittering around her like drops of frozen blood. Malric rose slowly from the wreckage, bleeding from one temple. He looked at the shattered vessel, then at Alara. For the first time, fear crossed his face, but only for a moment. Above them, the bells continued to mourn. The nobles still believed the prince was dead, and Malric, wounded but not yet exposed, turned toward the passage with a smile carved from desperation. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "the throne is mine. The crimson vessel has been destroyed. Lucien is alive, and Malric still believes he's about to claim the throne." How do you think the final confrontation will unfold? Before we reveal the ending, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story has traveled. Now get ready, because the biggest twist is about to shake all Valmoria forever. "Tomorrow," Malric had whispered, "the throne is mine." By morning he had dressed for victory. The throne hall of Blackthorn Castle overflowed with nobles, generals, high priests, and trembling courtiers dressed in black. Funeral candles burned along the marble steps. Crimson banners had been covered with mourning cloth. At the far end of the hall, beneath the ancient crown of Valmoria, Lord Malric Nightshade stood before the empty throne. He looked devastated. He looked noble. He looked exactly like a man prepared to inherit a kingdom. "My friends," he began, his voice heavy with practiced grief, "Valmoria has suffered a wound that will scar us for centuries." The nobles lowered their heads. "Prince Lucien, our beloved heir, has been taken from us. My brother, our king, is consumed by a grief no father should endure." A murmur moved through the hall. Malric let the silence deepen before continuing. "But kingdoms cannot mourn forever. Enemies beyond our borders are watching. Noble houses are afraid. Our people need certainty." He placed one hand over his heart. "I never wanted this burden." Alara stood hidden behind a side archway, bruised, exhausted, and barely able to remain upright. Beside her stood King Draven Nightshade. In his arms, wrapped in dark velvet and silver protection runes, was Prince Lucien, alive, awake, recovering. His cheeks still pale, but no longer deathly. His tiny fingers clutched the edge of his father's coat. Draven watched Malric with the stillness of a blade before it falls. Malric lifted his chin. "If the court believes me worthy, I will stand as heir to Valmoria until..." The throne room doors burst open. The sound struck the hall like thunder. Every noble turned. King Draven entered. The room went silent. Not quiet, silent. Malric froze halfway through his speech. Draven walked down the center aisle, his black cloak trailing behind him, his expression unreadable. Then the nobles saw the child in his arms. Someone gasped. A priest dropped his prayer beads. A noblewoman covered her mouth and began to weep. Prince Lucien opened his eyes. Alive. The dead heir stared out over the court. Malric's face drained of color. Draven stopped before the throne. "My son lives," he said. The words echoed through the hall. Alara stepped forward from behind him. Whispers erupted at once. The servant girl, the kitchen orphan. She was in the nursery. Draven raised one hand. Silence returned immediately. For months, he said, my son was not dying from illness. He was being drained by forbidden magic hidden inside this castle. The side doors opened. Royal guards dragged 3 chained blood mages into the hall. Their crimson robes were torn. Their faces were pale with terror. Behind them came the old physician, 2 loyal guards from the hidden chamber, and servants who had seen the silver dust carried through the nursery wing. Then one guard placed a black cloth bundle on the marble floor. Ilara knelt and unfolded it. Shattered pieces of red crystal glittered beneath the throne lights. The remains of the crimson vessel. A horrified murmur spread through the nobles. Draven's voice hardened. This relic was used to steal the prince's life force. Its magic was concealed with silver dust. Its crime was hidden behind a false diagnosis. Malric recovered enough to laugh. This is madness. Grief has made you desperate, brother. You parade a servant and broken glass before the court and call it proof? Draven looked toward the guards. Bring the recording. An ancient mirror was carried forward, its black surface veined with moonlight. Ilara recognized it from the archives, a witness mirror, made to preserve spoken truth when activated by guardian blood. She stepped forward and touched the moon mark beneath her collarbone. The mirror ignited. The throne hall filled with ghostly red light. Malric's own voice spilled from the glass. The prince has perhaps 3 weeks remaining. Then another voice. Too long. The nobles turned toward Malric. The mirror continued. Fear must become certainty. Certainty must become mourning. And mourning must become obedience. Malric's mouth opened. No words came. The next image showed him standing before the crimson vessel, its stolen light burning above the altar. The court erupted. Treason. Monster. He murdered the heir. He tried to steal the throne. Malric's mask broke. His sorrow vanished. His charm vanished. Only rage remained. You fools, he snarled. I waited centuries while Draven ruled as though the throne was his alone. I stood beside him through wars, through rebellions, through blood and fire. And when the future finally should have turned to me, he gave the kingdom to an infant. Draven's eyes burned red. My son, your weakness. Malric spat. He drew a hidden blade and lunged. Not at Draven, at Lucian. Ilara moved first. Moonlight burst from her hands, striking Malric across the chest. He staggered back. Draven passed Lucian to a guard and crossed the distance in a blur of black and silver. Malric swung. Draven caught his wrist and broke the blade from his hand. The younger brother fell to one knee. For a moment, the hall saw them not as king and traitor, but as brothers separated by ambition, grief, and centuries of silence. Draven looked down at him. You were my blood, he said. Malric smiled bitterly. And still never enough. Draven turned away. Take him below. The guard seized Malric. He fought once, then stopped, his eyes locking on Ilara with pure hatred. This kingdom will regret raising servants above blood. Draven looked back. No, he said. This kingdom was saved because one servant saw what blood refused to see. Months passed. Blackthorn Castle changed slowly. The mourning banners came down. Crimson glass shone again beneath the moon. The nursery wing filled not with whispers of death, but with the sound of Prince Lucian's laughter. The blood mages who survived were banished. Lord Malric was imprisoned beneath the deepest tower. Ancient records were reopened, and the forgotten moonborn guardians were restored to royal history. And Ilara was summoned before the court once more. This time she did not enter carrying trays. She entered through the main doors. The nobles bowed as she passed. At the foot of the throne, King Draven stood with Lucian in his arms. The prince reached for her moon pendant and laughed. For the first time in her life, Alara did not feel invisible. Draven faced the court. "Alara of the moonborn line," he said, "you uncovered treason when my court was blind. You saved my son when my power failed. You saved Velmoria when its bloodline was nearly stolen." He lowered his head. The Vampire King bowed to her. "I name you Savior of the Crown." The hall erupted, not with fear, with honor. Alara's eyes burned, but she did not look away. Draven stepped closer and spoke softly enough that only she could hear. "Not as a servant, not as an orphan, but as the woman who saved my son. Thank you." Years later, Prince Lucian would learn the story of how he survived, not because the kingdom's greatest healers cured him, not because ancient blood magic protected him, not because a king commanded it, but because one poor girl noticed what everyone else missed, and in doing so, saved the future of Velmoria.